Hey guys, welcome to The Market is Open. Today we're going to talk about Tesla. Sandy Munro did a podcast where he talked about the Model 3 and some of their new features and inventions and the competition that's coming. And he compared some of the motors and some of the other cars to the Model 3. We're going to talk a bit about Tesla in China. Sandy Munro has his own view about Tesla in China, and there's been some news about Elon Musk's groundbreaking for the new Gigafactory number 3. And lastly, please subscribe to our channel. We have 25 Tesla videos now. We do other stocks as well. We have about 100 videos now on the channel where we talk about news and earnings analysis and valuations for stocks. So please subscribe for more Tesla videos. So what Sandy Munro does is he takes cars apart and reverse engineers them, tries to figure out how things work. He's taken the Model 3 apart. He is interested in taking apart cars that are going to make the most money and selling the most vehicles. He does say that in the podcast. But yeah, so he won't be taking apart cars such as the Jaguar I-Pace or the Model S or X even, because he doesn't think those are mass market cars. But he did take apart the Model 3 because he does think that that's a mass market car. He even says that people are interested in the Jaguar, but no one really cares. Now, by the way, his podcast was about 2 hours and 40 minutes long. So this is going to be sort of a summary and some of the insights that I pulled from that podcast. Okay, so let's talk about some of the problems that he had with the Model 3. So he says that it's the heaviest C-Class car, and there are large gaps in the car because the body is poorly designed, like poor uses of steel and aluminum in the car. He does say too much steel is overkill in the car because the battery is already acts as support for the car. So why add additional steel for it? So it's sort of weighing the car down unnecessarily, is what he says. And he says that the car is over-designed. I think he was saying that that some of the parts were welded together from multiple pieces when other car companies are just stamping single piece ones, which is cheaper and more effective. And I think he even mentioned that to Elon Musk. I think he must have spoken to him, and Elon said, "Yeah, I fired that guy." But I'm not sure how easy it is for Tesla to start making those types of changes to the body of the car. Okay, now Sandy Munro does go on to say that Tesla is leading in sort of everything within the car. He's not too fond of the outside, the body of the car, but he thinks that the inside is not comparable with any other automaker. He says they're using these strong magnets, which are game changers. They're 40% more efficient. Here's a photo. It's kind of blurry, but it's a magnet that's made up of 4 pieces. And so the magnet itself is actually repelling itself, and it's held together by glue. They weren't even sure how they make these magnets, but he tried breaking one apart, and it didn't just break, it exploded because the magnets are pushing away from each other and only the glue is holding them together. But the advantage of these magnets is that you can turn faster and they're more efficient inside the motors of the car. He also says that Tesla is big on OTA updates, whereas none of the other auto manufacturers have really put that into their cars. They have like OnStar, but that's like sort of the baby OTA update, whereas Tesla can update everything from their braking distance to updates on the infotainment system, for example. Now he does show this thing called a super bottle, which is the cooling system inside the Tesla. So it basically cools the entire car. He was saying that this is incredibly efficient. No other automaker can do this. It takes a huge amount of innovation in order to design something like this that basically cools all parts of the car, does everything. And it's a small sort of capsule. Tesla calls it a super bottle, I guess. And it's one of the game changers for the Model 3. He was also saying about Tesla's manufacturing process that there's very few middleman suppliers. He says, although Tesla seems to have a lot of suppliers, it's mainly for like raw materials, and they seem to make a lot of the things themselves. So that's a different view from what I've heard other people talk about. Even Elon says he has thousands of suppliers, and if just one of them is slow, it creates a bottleneck in the whole system. But Sandy Munro says that the suppliers are not really middleman type suppliers, which could help increase their margins. He was also saying that millennials are the ones really interested in this car and in the Model 3, and they don't really care about gaps. They don't even know what gaps are. I mean, for most people, it's probably their first car or their first new car. Most people have bought used cars in the past. But this car is quiet. There's no oil changes. You don't need to go to gas station, etc. And And that's what people are really looking for. They don't care about the little tiny gaps, which are pretty much negligible in the car. Yeah, he also commented on the Jaguar I-Pace motor and said that it has far less range for the equivalent size of the battery. I think the 90 kilowatt hour is even worse. The Jaguar's 90 kilowatt battery is worse in terms of range than Tesla's 75 kilowatt battery, and Tesla's car is even heavier than the Jaguar I-Pace. So obviously Tesla's definitely doing something better. The motor is better designed than their competitors. Here are some comparisons between three cars, the Model 3, the BMW i3, and the Chevy Bolt. So the Model 3 is the cheapest of the three electric motors, and it also weighs the least. So, I mean, this chart doesn't show efficiency, but I mean, the Jaguar I-Pace is a pretty high-end car. It's not on this chart here, and it's beating that. So it doesn't seem like, it seems like these motors are more expensive, they weigh more, and they're not even as efficient as Tesla's motor. Now he does comment on the strengths of each of these cars. So he says that for the Bolt, they took a Spark, they put in batteries and motors, and by doing that, they basically were able to save a lot of the costs and delivered to market quickly the Bolt car, the Chevy Bolt. So that was one of the advantages of the Bolt. For BMW, I believe they had their own carbon fiber plant. I think they sold it more recently. But they have great casting and welding, and they have interesting technology of welding two kinds of aluminum together. So he said that was pretty useful for the body of the car, and that was one of the advantages of BMW. But then he goes on to say that Tesla's advantages are pretty much everything else. So they have the best electronic designs, the best harness designs. He says it drives like it's on rails. I guess that means it has extremely good handling. It has the best motor and the best slush box, which is not a transmission. He says everything apart from basically the skin, the outside, the body of the car is better than every single other competitor that he's seen, and he does take apart and study quite a few cars. And here's a quick picture of the different types of motors that he was just talking about. He did comment on the look of the car. I mean, the Model 3 does look like a pretty stylish and modern car, whereas the competition looks like this. It was David Welch from Bloomberg was also on the podcast, and he was saying that the Bolt looks like a running sneaker. And he was also saying that Americans don't like hatchbacks anymore, and that might be one of the reasons why these cars aren't really selling. Americans also don't like small cars. But he did say that the i3 looked a bit like a stormtrooper helmet in white. I don't really see it, but I think in white it does look like that. But yeah, I agree, these cars aren't that appealing. I'm sure there's a market for them out there. The Chevy Bolt does sell maybe 2,000 cars approximately on average a month. Like the Model 3 definitely outsells that. But these cars are pretty ugly. Let me know in the comments below which of these two cars you think is the ugliest. Okay, so now this was the most interesting part, I thought, was what Sandy Munro had to say about Tesla. He says that when they open their plant in China, I mean, they are planning the Gigafactory 3 to start producing Model 3s in China. So he says that they can pull 20% of the costs out of the car compared to their American counterparts. So that's gigantic. That'll definitely, I mean, if they're able to do that, it'll increase Tesla's margins hugely. He says when he takes the car to China, he's going to make a gazillion bucks, I guarantee it. I mean, I guess that has to do with the margins and the large market that China has, and he won't have to sort of ship cars there from the United States, because it'll be built on the same continent as Elon says. Now, in terms of building the factory, he says that he's not going to make the same mistake twice. I mean, there were a lot of production problems and issues when Elon Musk and Tesla were bringing up the Gigafactory in California. And so Sandy Munro thinks that the Tesla factory in China is going to be wicked compared to the one that they've got in the US. And I definitely agree with that. I think that the design has changed over time. It's been at least 2 years since they've been working on the Gigafactory in California, and so a lot of revisions have been made. I mean, Tesla doesn't sit still. They probably have a much smarter and cheaper factory using all of the lessons that they've learned in the United States. And so Sandy Munro really thinks that they're going to crush it in China. And also this week, Elon was in China for the groundbreaking of the new factory, the Gigafactory 3. He says that they're aiming to finish the initial construction this summer. So, of course, even the Gigafactory in California isn't complete yet. It's only partially done yet. It's manufacturing thousands of Model 3s each month. The factory will end up being, I think, maybe 3 times its current size. It's one of the largest buildings in the world. And the plan, of course, is to produce other cars at the plant like Model Y in the United States. And of course, after they're doing Model 3 in China, they're going to start Model Y as well. So he says Model 3 production will start at the end of the year and reach high volume production next year. So that's a pretty aggressive timeline to be able to finish the initial construction. So probably the part of the factory that's going to be building Model 3s by summer. So that's probably, let's say, about 6 months of construction. And if you can start the Model 3 production by the end of the year, even if you can just produce maybe 30 cars, I mean, we can look at the rate of production increase of the United States factory and compare it to China. So if he's able to get just a couple cars, it took a little bit less than a year in the United States for them to go from 0 cars to huge production. I think maybe not 5,000 a week, but about, let's say, 3,000 a week easily in less than a year. So if this factory is going to be more efficient and they can just produce even just one car, like start production basically by the end of the year, like they say, then production is going to reach high volume within maybe like 6 months, and they won't have as many issues as they did in the United States, assuming that their construction is complete. So thanks so much for watching. Check out our other stock videos and please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Thanks very much.